Okay, let's try something different. Imagine they made the perfect Pokemon game on Nintendo Switch. What would it be like?
Huh. What would the perfect Pokemon game be like?
Even though I give it a lot of crap, I'd really love the Pokemon franchise.
I promise.
I criticize this game so harshly because I care so much for the franchise, which is why it is sad to say that in recent years,
I've kind of been disappointed. Mainly by this one.
but even with all the disappointment, I still like the series and feel like it is moving in a better direction as time passes. None of the experiences have been perfect, but there were a few that came close, or at least a step closer to being the ultimate Pokemon game. By now, we've seen what the Nintendo Switch can do and how it can amaze us. So, what would I consider to be the perfect Pokemon game?
I just asked you that.
Sorry. I guess I'll begin with the sound.
If there is something they get right with the games, it is usually the music, from quiet to peaceful tunes, all the way to big orchestral pieces.
Don't go changing that.
But one thing the games really need badly is some form of voice acting. For those out there, like Game Freak, who don't know what voice acting is, Wikipedia says that voice acting is the art of performing voiceovers to present a character or provide information to the audience. I feel that these games can really become more alive by utilizing this art form, as opposed to the silent characters they currently have. I hated it when I reached a big climatic moment in Pokemon games and there was just silence. Like the opening of Pokemon Sword and Shield, where the chairman gives a big speech in a stadium and all you hear is music and the cheer of the crowds.
As if a dude forgot his microphone.
Or the part in Pokemon Sword and Shield where a gym leader sings and there are no vocals.
As if a dude forgot to plug in his microphone.
I'm not saying that they should add full voice acting to the entire game. They could do what Breath of the Wild and many other games did, and just make the characters make sexually suggestive sounds every time they talk, instead of having fully voiced lines.
Man, those fairies get me into a lot of trouble.
The bigger climatic moments, such as the opening sequence, do however need full voice acting. It is the damn start of the game, the part that most people, even the ones who quit after an hour, will see. Why not make it feel like a big grand opening that people can remember, while the rest of the game is mostly filled with groans and moans? Even adding it to the gyms, or at least to this dude singing, would have been a way better option than what we got. The ultimate Pokemon game needs to maintain the same level of quality it currently has when it comes to the music, while adding voice acting to the game if it wants to keep up with other modern PlayStation 2 games.
Interesting. What else?
The graphics.
I feel that the graphics level we have achieved in Pokemon Sword and Shield and Pokemon Legends Arceus is at the level that suits the franchise the best.
Boo.
That's not very nice.
I'm sorry. I'll leave in the comments, like a civil person.
Sure, we can push things further and make things look like the graphics of Pokken Tournament or New Pokemon Snap, but those games show the Pokemon in a more controlled environment, which allows for things like that. A big Pokemon adventure, on the other hand, needs to be more open, which is why the current art style works well. It fits in with the feeling of a Pokemon world, and the Pokemon themselves look pretty good. In some places, they can spend a bit more time on the trees and some textures, but going too realistic will make the game lose its animated feel. The Pokemon look good and the world fits with them. Why break something that works? I understand that these games will always look a little bit less impressive than other AAA titles, and that is mostly due to the art style, but Game Freak can put a bit more care into how they utilize the art style. One part I did like about Sword and Shield was the attention to some details. The opening area had these big fields with a town in the distance and a windmill spinning faster than 5 frames per second. All of it looked so gorgeous. In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it feels like they did not have the time or resources to add these little details in a visually pleasing way. Probably due to one guy that messed up a line of the game's code, causing everything else to suffer. I want to reach locations and see a fountain spraying water, some good looking flowers, and a windmill that works in the background. So the art style can stay, but they do need to work on some of the textures, details, and objects that make you go,
Damn, That's one ugly texture.
Which brings me to the next part. The world.
The Pokemon franchise has slowly made its way to having an open world, starting with a single open area with camera controls in Pokemon Sword and Shield, to the semi-open world design in Pokemon Legends Arceus, where we had big areas to explore, all the way to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, where we now have a big open world like we always wanted.
And look where that got us.
While having a big open world is cool, not having anything fun to do or discover is bad. As a result of going with a big open world, there is now a lot of empty space for dust to gather. The first transgression is that with the fully open world of Scarlet and Violet, the game started to look a lot uglier and perform a lot worse. Somewhere there has to be someone who messed up something with the game's rendering, as opposed to the fact that it runs on older hardware. That excuse sailed when the Switch launched with Breath of the Wild, and now that ship even has rockets strapped to it since we got Tears of the Kingdom. Games can run well on the Nintendo Switch if they are optimized right and aren't cluttered with unnecessary things. The other problem is that in all the Pokemon games, there were always some places that felt special compared to the rest of the world. It can be a bug-filled forest to explore, a safari area where you can search for rare Pokemon that always get away, a dark cave where you can't see what's happening around you, an electric plant that held a rare Pokemon, a big stretch of water that had islands and caves along the way, some paths blocked by a Snorlax, or even a tower that served as a Pokemon graveyard.
And all of that is just Gen 1 Pokemon games.
In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it seems that in order to achieve the open world they created, they had removed a lot of these unique locations. Sure, there are caves and forest areas, but they are uninteresting and don't feel like much of a challenge to get through. I would like to see these concepts brought into an open world like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet to make different locations more interesting, as opposed to just having a different color ground and mountain. If they can't fully achieve an open world, then why not work with the same world design as they used in Pokemon Legends Arceus? But instead of just choosing which place to go to, you have smaller areas linking these big areas, almost like Monster Hunter. This would be a great way to add some creative areas to the game that break from the open areas and give us a more planned out challenge. Maybe give us a forest maze that is simple to get through, but has hidden areas with some stronger Pokemon or rare hidden items. Give us a cave system where we end up feeling like there's no way we're going to make it out without being wiped out, and then we get a sudden relief when we turn a corner and find an opening with light. Maybe add a whole different island or a smaller area of the island that can only be accessed by surfing there and fighting a lot of trainers along the way. All I'm asking for are more unique areas to explore within the world that consist of more than trees and mountains.
There's a lot more that can be said, so I think I should break it up into smaller pieces, but are a little bit more digestible.
Like a chocolate bar.
No! It's nothing like a chocolate bar. It's more like a cake.
Cake is good. So what else can they improve with this cake?
Well, for one, they can start with the towns.
The towns need to feel like more than placeholders for gyms. In all the Pokemon games, there were things to do in towns. You could invade Team Rocket's hideout, go look at a rock, explore a mansion, fight an unofficial gym to get a special Pokemon, or fight trainers on a ship.
Once again, all of this is from the first gen games.
There needs to be more to towns than just having a Pokemon Center, pushing an olive around, and fighting a gym. Give us extra quests to do to help the town with some dilemma they might be facing, such as a Pokemon infestation, Team Rocket stealing everyone's Pokemon, or a Hypno that makes the whole town fall asleep, and then you need to find and defeat it, or a town that has some gimmick behind exploring it, or even just a sick Pokemon in a light tower that needs special medicine to shine. This would make towns feel like more than just placeholders and actually make them fun to discover and explore. You can even add a bunch of hidden items to the mix just to make exploring around every corner worth it. Towns also need more buildings to enter, instead of being limited to 1 or 2 buildings and having shop menus instead of shops to explore.
Imagine playing Skyrim, and instead of being able to go into people's houses, you just get a list of items you can steal.
I don't want to.
Not having buildings to enter makes us lose the ability to find an office full of bad guys, or a casino with an underground base, or a one-of-a-kind Pokemon just randomly laying on some table. The towns need to be fleshed out to make them feel real and make them worth discovering, just like other special locations in the world.
Another thing that needs a bit of tweaking is the items.
Pokemon Legends Arceus added the ability to collect certain resources such as berries from trees and ore from rocks, and then use those items to craft useful items such as Pokeballs and potions to use on your journey. This is good, and I like it. I would like to see a few more resources added, such as the famous rock from the Safari Zone in Gen 1. I liked that every item I collected felt useful, as opposed to just being things that filled up the space in my inventory. In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they made finding items around the world feel dumb, as there are items represented by shining lights scattered everywhere and they respawn. This is bad.
Where do all of these items come from? Do potions and revives rain from the sky? Or is there like an invisible Casper dropping shit everywhere?
A lot of his items felt redundant, as I found no use for them, and they were just things that I had to scroll past while looking for the items I needed. One thing they did however do right in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is to give resources specific to Pokemon as a reward for winning battles. These items could be used to craft TMs, which gave them a purpose and gave you an incentive to challenge certain Pokemon. I like this mechanic, so I feel that having both this and the item collecting from Pokemon Legends Arceus would fit the perfect Pokemon game. Having items you collect from Pokemon to create TMs, as well as having other items you collect in the world to create more useful items, will add a lot more to the world and make some repetitive tasks feel more rewarding. It can also incentivize you to return to certain areas to collect certain items and resources. Stronger items should be much harder to find, such as being dropped by stronger Pokemon or not having them respawn. This adds a reason for players to explore every corner of the map in search of rare items that can help their Pokemon evolve, or even some rare TMs that can't be crafted.
Make things feel like they have a reason to exist. Unlike Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's NPCs.
They really need to rethink the type of NPCs they add to the game. In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, towns are filled with a bunch of throwaway characters that don't add anything to the story, and removing them from the world won't change much to the game other than improving performance. On the other hand, not all, but most NPCs in Pokemon Legends Arceus feel like they have a purpose. Some give you tasks related to their needs or duties within the town, and others give you pieces of lore related to the world, or assist you in completing your tasks. Having these characters in the town made it feel so much more alive, and made me feel like there was a reason to interact with the NPCs around me. There needs to be more of that in the game, not only to help flesh out the towns as mentioned before, but also to give you a reason to return to a location later in the game, to maybe discover how things might have changed.
There's so much they can do to make the world feel more dynamic. So why don't they do that?
Add some NPCs throughout the world that have special requests, such as finding a certain Pokemon or item, clearing out an area of dangerous Pokemon, collecting certain berries to heal their Pokemon, helping them catch their first Pokemon, or even teaming up with them to get through a cave. NPCs also need a few better lines. By having generic NPCs everywhere, you can't really give them much variety, but with more dedicated townfolk, you can give them interesting things to say, such as what is happening around the town, how things work in the town, or maybe give you some tips on fighting the gym leader, or talk about their favorite restaurant, or they can even give you hints about hidden items or legendary Pokemon in the surrounding area.
Why are they there if they don't serve a purpose?
I often wonder that about you.
Dude! That's messed up!
I'm not the one who wrote the script.
Oh yeah, my bad.
Please give us a rival that we can hate again. It is fun to have a friend that you help through the game, but give us a rival that acts like a real jerk and challenge us to an extent where we realize how underpowered we are at certain points in the game and makes us feel like we need to work harder to catch up to the rival. Lesser NPCs also need to be more prominent in the world. Instead of having a bunch of people standing around waiting for you to challenge them, have some kid jump out of a tree when you try and pick up a berry, or have the bad guys randomly ambush you along the way, or even have some eager trainers trying to chase you down for a battle.
It would make the world feel a lot more alive, and add to the danger.
The game needs a danger factor. In Pokemon Legends Arceus, we got a taste of adrenaline and it felt good. Wild Pokemon attack you directly, and it is up to you to throw out a Pokemon to protect you, or to run for the hills. I understand that having wild Pokemon attack you won't always work in Pokemon games.
But in my perfect Pokemon game, they do.
Not all Pokemon even need to be aggressive, but having a few here and there makes the world feel more dynamic and alive. Just running around every Pokemon makes it feel like a game of cat and mouse as opposed to a game where you have to fight wild creatures. If you enter a strong Pokemon's territory, there needs to be a challenge or something to watch out for. In all the Pokemon games, there were moments where you were almost through a cave, but all your Pokemon get wiped out and you need to try again. But with the open world, we lost all of that and can just run past all the danger and set up camp almost anywhere.
We traded intense moments for curry and sandwiches.
Delicious.
If we can just run past encounters and rest everywhere we want, then maybe having stronger Pokemon that chase us down more aggressively can be a good way to balance things out. We need those moments where it feels like the world is going to get us, so that we can feel like we have achieved something when we overcome those challenges.
We need something that we can call an adventure.
The way they gave you the option to tackle different storylines in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet was refreshing. The only problem is that they messed it up by not making the world scale along with you. Being able to take on the strongest gym leader first is lame, when all of the other gyms are just a breeze to get through as a result. We need an adventure where the world progresses along with us, even if it is linked to something such as gym badges. I like the idea of being able to complete certain tasks in any order I want to, but not having a world that progresses alongside you makes that there is actually a right path to follow as opposed to having freedom. It would be better if we can face a stronger bug catcher NPC if we face them after obtaining the third badge as opposed to just having a weak NPC that is boring all the time. They can still keep the overall level of Pokemon balance in the world, with weaker Pokemon around, and then add a few stronger Pokemon and evolutions as we progress. Meaning if we find a Pichu in the starting area, we can later discover a Pikachu, or even a Raichu, or even a freaking Rhydon that is cramping up the weaker Pokemon style, giving us an incentive to backtrack to all the areas as we progress.
An adventure needs to be more than just ticking off a bunch of items from a list.
The world needs fun and interesting moments to discover. We need interesting areas with different paths so that there's an opportunity to make fun discoveries, such as two Pokemon fighting each other for territory, or even finding a legendary Pokemon in a cave down a path that you ignored 100 times. An adventure needs these moments to have a reason for you to talk to your friends about your discovery or experience, as opposed to checking how far down a checklist you have gotten.
Now that we've checked that off the list, what's next?
The Pokemon.
The first thing is that I understand that not all Pokemon can appear in a single region, and that is okay. I am fine with a region with fewer Pokemon, but then those Pokemon deserve the care that they do. The areas in the region need to feel more diverse as opposed to seeing Luxray everywhere in Pokemon Legends Arceus. Having fewer Pokemon also gives the developers more time to work out some unique sequences for some Pokemon, so that we can witness some special moments, such as a Pokemon looking for food, or even some Pokemon evolving in the wild. Just because I'm okay with having fewer Pokemon in a region, doesn't mean that I'm okay with not having a national Dex. I feel that every Pokemon game should have this, as cutting a handful of Pokemon from the list never made sense to me and also alienates fans of certain Pokemon, such as people who like Magmar with his butthead. If I spent the time and effort to catch a Pokemon in one game, I should have the opportunity to transfer it over and add it to my team in another game, even if it is only available in the post game.
But then again, just add all of them to the list. I'm pretty sure someone is creative enough to come up with an idea as to why all the Pokemon are in this region at once.
I love the fact that Pokemon now appear in the overworld, and it would be sad to see that taken away. It makes the world feel alive in some ways, and is a good way to flesh out the world. The only thing is that we need something better than the terrible flight patterns, or just random walking paths for some Pokemon. We need Pokemon that interact with the world in creative ways. I would rather have fewer Pokemon appear at once and make the experience more memorable, as opposed to having 100 Pokemon on screen, and they are all boring.
Why would they even do that?
It's called being lame.
I hated seeing the same thing over and over in Pokemon Scarlet. There would be a few of the same Pokemon walking around, and then a bunch of groups where weaker Pokemon surround a stronger one. This is fine for some Pokemon, but seeing it all over makes every area feel the same. I feel that Pokemon Legends Arceus had a good balance of Pokemon appearing at once. There were enough around to make things interesting, while not having too many that will end up spoiling any attempt at being sneaky.
Sometimes less is more.
Oh wow, did you come up with that?
Yes.
Now that you've built a concept for the perfect Pokemon region, what would the game be like? How would you handle the gameplay mechanics?
I would make things interesting and bring back most of the mechanics used in Pokemon Legends Arceus with a few tweaks. Pokemon need to be more threatening in some way, and I felt like Legends Arceus handled this well, where wild Pokemon attack you. It added to the adventure in ways that none of the mainline Pokemon games have managed, making the task of exploring the world feel interesting and dangerous. Overcoming an area with a tough Pokemon felt rewarding and made it feel like you made progress. So in my perfect Pokemon game, dangerous wild Pokemon need to be a thing. I would also like to see new ways of them attacking, so that they have multiple actions that can catch you off guard. I would make the movement feel just as fluid as in Legends Arceus, with sneaking and dodge rolls.
Like Dark Souls.
I would also add things such as being able to slide down slopes on your knees while throwing Pokeballs, or throwing slow-mo Pokeballs while dodging attacks successfully. Oh yeah, we definitely need the catching mechanic from Pokemon Legends Arceus, but without the broken feather balls. Pokemon even need to have a further detection distance, or feather balls need to go as they are broken. One thing the game also definitely needs is the Let's Go ability, where your Pokemon can follow you, auto-battle wild Pokemon, and even collect items. It is one of the few things that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet got right, and it would be a shame if it did not return in the perfect Pokemon game. Having a Pokemon that follows you is always the best feeling for me in Pokemon games. It makes me feel like I'm on an adventure with that Pokemon, instead of just having them in my party. I would also like to see this expanded by giving Pokemon abilities like in Pokewilds. In Pokewilds, which is a fan-made Pokemon game, some Pokemon have abilities that they can use to interact with the world. Some can cut grass and trees, others can surf, break rocks, provide a light source, and some can even leap up ledges. I feel that being able to use your Pokemon party to get through the world is much more rewarding than having one Pokemon that gets you everywhere. These abilities should be linked to the Pokemon themselves and not influence available attacks.
This brings us to the exciting part. The battles.
I liked the faster battles we had in Pokemon Legends Arceus, but it felt like it lacked or overlooked certain strategies. The battles need to be fast like in Pokemon Legends Arceus and use the speed-based turn system to make things more interesting, but add more negative effects or some status effects. The battle animation also needs to be more on par with Legends Arceus as opposed to the other games where it felt stiff. One thing I missed was the ability to fight multiple Pokemon at once. This adds to the challenge and rewards you for being more careful when engaging in battle.
And finally, I would bring back Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's multiplayer. But this time, it would work.
You have a lot of faith, don't you?
The idea that you can share your world with other players and go on different journeys together or alone and then meet up to share what you discovered is a cool concept. But damn, if it is there, it cannot break the game the same way Scarlet and Violet did. It needs to work or rather not be there to begin with. I feel that they have come close to creating the perfect Pokemon game for the Nintendo Switch, but the experience has always been just a little off. A lot of that has to do with Game Freak following the tight schedule of the Pokemon franchise, so they don't always have control over when the games need to be released. But I feel that if they just get the time they deserve, as the developers of Tears of the Kingdom and the creators of the next Metroid Prime 4 logo got, then they could create something brilliant.
So basically what you want is another Pokemon Legends game, but better.
Yes, that's basically it. Wow.
See? Don't you feel better now?
Yeah, thank you HR department. Now I can finally forget about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And the fact that I lost Cousin.
My job here is done. Now you can get safely back to reading the terms and conditions.
Yay!